Good evening. Welcome to the Elmhurst Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, March 25th. Board's been in closed session since 6 o'clock this evening for discussion of employment of employee, approval of the February 25th, 2014 and the March 11th, 2014 closed session minutes, and for student discipline. We have 5 board members present, 2 absent this evening. And will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did they switch seats or something? Because doesn't Emily?
Next, and the best part of any school board meeting, is student recognition. Mr. Purnell.
Yes, we are here this evening to really honor a very special York student who has been recently named as a United States Senate Youth Program Delegate. She is one of 2 representing Illinois. We are very proud of her, and I have met with her a couple of times. She's a great student, but I don't want to steal Principal Smith's thunder because I know I'll get in trouble. So I will introduce Diana Smith, who will do the honors this evening.
No, you guys always think I talk too long when I'm doing this, so I'm going to keep this very brief. But the reason why is because I'm going to ask Mary Margaret to talk a little bit about her experience. It is my pleasure to introduce our student body president, Mary Margaret Cook, who, as Mr. Purnell talked about, is one of only 2 students from Illinois that was awarded the William Randolph Hearst U.S. Senate Award. She went to Washington for a week and represented us well. You'll see the picture here. She's in the front, in the middle. And I just wanted to tell you just a little bit about her. You know, we talk about the slogan, "This is York." This is York. This is the very best of York right here. She is a wonderful leader. She went to Jackson. It's like we planned it, right? We planned it. Linda Schneider and others who were her teachers, and she credits a lot of teachers along the way, including at York. She also talks about Mr. Agan and Miss Iverson and people all along the way that inspired her, but most of all her parents, Mark and Kathy, who I just said next year need to come back for our senior night, letting go, and tell us exactly how you did it, because she's just an amazing student. We have loved working with her, and I'm going to turn it over to her. Before I do, I just wanted to share with the teachers that are here and all of us, and maybe with you, that we learned today that she's being awarded the Illinois Federation of Teachers Scholarship. So she's going to receive the scholarship from the teachers, and we got that letter today. So go ahead. Very much.
All right. Hi, everyone. As Ms. Smith just said, 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of representing the state of Illinois at the United States Senate Youth Program. And it was a week that honestly was one of the best experiences of my life. During my week in DC, I had the opportunity to visit many of the city's landmarks and hear from 25 different speakers from all 3 branches of government. And while some of the speakers were unknown even to a group of politically savvy teenagers before the week started, some of the people that took time out of their schedules to meet with us are people that you hear about every night on the news. In 1 week, I was able to ask Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia a question about his judicial philosophy, be interviewed by Brian Lamb, the founder of C-SPAN, ask astronauts orbiting Earth on the International Space Station about the future of STEM education, and shake President Obama's hand. And I'm pretty sure I'm still shaking over excitement over that last one. But it wasn't just the speakers that made the week memorable. It was the chance to meet 103 other teenagers from around the country that care about government and public service just as much as I do. My fellow 2014 delegates are some of the brightest and most genuine people I've ever met, and everyone had a unique story for why they were chosen to participate in the program. The fusing of different cultures, backgrounds, and political leanings sparked some of the most intense and, shall we say, interesting debates that I've ever had the privilege of participating in. This incredible group of teenagers gives me so much hope for the future, and I'm sure at least one of them will be household names by 2032, the earliest that any of us can run for president. But in all seriousness, this program opened my eyes to the real Washington, D.C., a city where compromise and hope are not dead, a city where President Obama encourages teenagers to not give up on idealism, a city where people are changing the world, and they're changing it for the better. And lastly, I'd just like to thank Mr. Pernod, Ms. Smith, and all my teachers for supporting me in this nomination to the program, because without their support, I never could have had this life-changing experience. Thank you.
Stick around, I got something for you. First, I get to read it. I'm just going to go right to the proclamation because I can't top any of that. Except to maybe comment that I think our generation has left your generation a whole lot of problems that you can solve for us. So, the proclamation reads, whereas U.S. Senators Richard Durbin and Mark Kirk recently announced the names of 2 Illinois students that were selected as delegates to the 52nd United States Senate Youth Program, held March 8th to March 15th in Washington, D.C. And whereas the United States Senate Youth Program was created by Senate Resolution 324 in 1962, sponsored by the Senate and fully funded by the Hearst Foundation, to increase young Americans' understanding of the interrelationships of the 3 branches of government, the caliber and responsibility of federally elected and appointed officials, and the vital importance of democratic decision-making, not only for America, but for the people around the world. And whereas each year this extremely competitive merit-based program brings 104 of the top outstanding high school students, 2 from each state, the District of Columbia, and from the Department of Defense Education Activity to Washington, D.C., for an intensive week-long study of the federal government and the people who lead it. And whereas the overall mission of the program is to help instill within each class of the United States Senate Youth Program student delegates more profound knowledge of the American political process and a lifelong commitment to public service. And whereas Mary Margaret Cook, York Community High School student, body president, and member of the class of 2014, was one of the 2 Illinois students chosen to represent the state of Illinois as a United States Senate Youth Program delegate, and whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to our community. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to Mary Margaret and her family for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations. You made us very proud. And will you bring that back to Ms. Smith? Thank you very much. Oh, wait a minute. We gotta send you.
President, we're not quite.
Myself. Would you do us a proud favor? I'm just going around shaking. We do this to every kid because you just happen to be alone. So if you would just want to walk around that side, that's the most expeditious.
Congratulations. Way to go.
Thank you for the reminder, Chris. I got caught up in the moment, so forgot the protocol. And then, Mr. Pernod, you also have an announcement and some recognition as well.
Yes, it's a privilege this evening. The Board of Education will be taking a vote to approve a recommendation for the appointment of Tammy Poole as the next principal of Field Elementary School. Tammy's in the audience this evening. Tammy, if you want to stand up. Tammy, we feel very excited to have Tammy joining the team. Tammy is a 9-year veteran out of Lake of the Hills Elementary School and has turn that school around from a failing school to a very successful school. We feel very privileged that she wanted to come to Elmhurst, and it's a real privilege to recommend her this evening to the Elmhurst Board of Education.
Welcome, Tammy. We're happy to have you. Next on the agenda is public comments. I don't have any blue cards up here. Is there anyone in the audience that's here to say something? We don't want to deny you that opportunity. Hearing none, we'll move on to Superintendent's communication. Mr. Purnell.
Yes, we have two items this evening. One is Freedom of Information Act requests. We had three since the past board meeting. Two regarding specific bid results, which were granted. One regarding emails containing a specific word, which was also granted. And one regarding vendor contract information, and that was also granted. And then the second item this evening is a recommendation for student fees for the 14-15 school year. And for this one, I will turn this over to Chris Welton, who will do a short, brief summary of the recommendation this evening.
Yes. I want to first go through the K through 8 student fees. We have the pre-K, the Madison fee is a decrease, $13. The kindergarten fee is up $2. The grades 1 through 5 is the same fee at $182. The 6 through 8 fee is a decrease of $6. The middle school athletics, we've changed this to a two-tier fee. Track and cross country will be a $40 fee. This is an increase of $5.75. But with that, students will receive a cross country track T-shirt that will be their uniform in their running events, and they'll be able to keep that T-shirt. So it's an increase in fee, but they will be able to keep that T-shirt. The volleyball and basketball, those sports are a much more expensive sport, and we estimate that these sports cost closer to $125 per student. Those costs including officials and busing and coaches' expense and uniform expense. And the increase in volleyball and basketball, we plan to purchase new basketball uniforms next year and volleyball uniforms the following year. So that increase is from $34.25 last year to $70 for next year. The technology fee is an increase of $15 from $35 to $50, and this increase is for instructional technology. But the K-8 student fees are based on the textbook adoptions that are in place, and currently those textbooks are amortized over 6 years. Prior to last year, they were 5 years, and this year, the reason that we're relatively flat or decreasing is that we've had some textbooks finish their amortization and before without having new adoptions. Next year, we expect to have an increase as we have a few more new textbook adoptions. Before I move to high school, are there any questions on K-8? So then on high school, yes.
So next year, we're going to be adopting several new textbooks in K through 8. So I would anticipate that those fees would go up because we have brand new textbooks and we're amortizing them.
Yes, we do expect there to be an increase in the following year, which is the 15-16 school year.
Thank you.
Yes.
So at the bottom where it talks about the fees that are waived,
Yes.
is the registration fee the numbers from the top category under grade?
Yes.
Okay. So then there's other fees. Okay, so then the ones below that are from the other fees. Okay. Got it.
Yes, the fees waived are generally fees that are required and not optional.
Includes the technology.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else for Chris? All right, move on.
For the high school, the first change is the cap and gown, and that fee is going from $24.50 to $26. This is just a pass-through. This is the cost that Herff Jones is charging us for the cap and gown. It has gone up from $24.50 to $26, so that is why we are increasing that fee. The lab fee for intro for family consumer science, this is for there's a week or 2 week section of foods in this class, in this course. And so this $8 fee will cover the food costs during that section. The technology fee, again, $35 to $50. That $15 increase is for instructional technology. The yearbook, this is good news. We bid out the yearbook last year. The costs have come down. It's coming down. It was $50 last year. It will be $35 if a student purchases a textbook prior to the start of the school year. So during that book sale period before the start of school, it will be $35. After the start of school, the yearbook will be $40. Either way, it's a savings over last year. And those are the only changes at the high school.
Any questions? Hearing none?
This is the first reading of the school fees. They will come to the board for approval at the second meeting in April.
Thank you. Anything else on this topic? Shall we move on? Okay. Next is the approval of board meeting minutes from February 25th and March 11th. Are there any changes to those minutes? Hearing none, then those minutes stand as submitted. Next is board committee reports. First from the Board Improvement Committee. Sure.
All right, so board improvement. We met Shannon and I met, it was more of a working session, roll up our sleeves, try to make progress from our board mid-year review, January 15th meeting. So what we really did was just take the topics from that mid-year review and are moving them forward. But it's really kind of putting our documentation together. So the first one was the board poll, the Harris survey. And as we talked about at the mid-year review, we all went out and had our luncheons with our staff. I know that we had another one recently this week. So if you have any more additional feedback from our staff luncheons, provide them to me, and then we'll roll that into this feedback. But what we're trying to do is twofold. One is to get the feedback categorized based on the feedback that we got from the Harris survey. Because the point being is that in the Harris survey, they tell us that the items that we got let's say our most improvement areas, we will make the most impact if we move forward in those areas. So that's what we tried to do. So what you're going to see is the feedback that we got from all of our staff from those luncheons categorized around the perception of communications, team building, decision-making, et cetera. And any other feedback that we got will be in a separate section, okay? So that we can address and put together action plans to make the most impact as quickly as we can, okay? There was a second piece to that. We did hear consistent messages from our staff that our board norms had changed. And so what we tried to do in this working session is look at our old board norms. And if I recall correctly, the last time that they were reviewed was June 9th of 2013 in a board retreat. So what really we're doing is we're kind of organizing them together around themes. And then we'll bring that, what our recommendation is that we review it at our June retreat. Like we typically have summer retreats. So we as a board can look at those board norms. And then what we will do is communicate out to our staff. One, the board norms, so that they all know that what our board norms are. And they've been updated from, I think it was 2010, was the last time they were updated. Besides the June 9th, 2013, when we as a new board put together our norms. And then secondly, we are going to go back out to our, through our school liaison program and communicate our action plan with respect to how it relates to our Harris survey. Okay, so that's kind of the bigger picture plan that we're looking together for the Harris survey. Yes, go ahead.
Can you give me an example of a board norm? I guess maybe I should know that, but I'll play the new card. Like, what's an example of a board norm?
One of which I'm going to say that the controversy was at one point that staff and board members were not supposed to talk, and that was what some of our staff felt as though that was what was still going on, and April or June of 2011, we updated the board norms. And I know that, and when we have a new board, we need to look at the new board norms. So another item is, how do we put together board agendas? How do we provide feedback? How does the president work with the board and the superintendent, all those sorts of things. So those are kind of board norms.
My other question was, so I think it says in here, we're going to communicate what we collected at these brown bag lunches. We're going to communicate that back to the staff. Is that right? Mm-hmm. You said we're going to do that individually with our liaison schools, or are we going to send it by email to everybody?
We, during our mid-year review, talked about going back out to the staffs.
Okay.
So we as a board had articulated that desire.
Okay.
So that's why we updated, I provided the update that way. If we choose a different vehicle, that's fine.
Okay, so so it's up to us then to meet with our liaison schools to invite the staff to come to another brown bag lunch where we'll communicate, or just do it by email? How are you picturing it?
That's a really good question. My understanding during our mid-year review is that we wanted to get back out to the staff because the staff was saying that they wanted to see us more often.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's going to be possible for every school, for every board member. So we can talk about it. We can say, how do we want to do that? We could have a, plan A, plan B sort of thing. If we can get to the schools, if the staff can participate. Not all staff members get to those brown bag lunches anyway, so we could follow up with something in writing. I mean, this is all being done through board docs and public communications and the website anyway.
Okay.
But I think that it would be good to formally put it out in writing anyway, so that, people have different ways of seeing it, as we heard during those luncheons, that, you get a lot of emails, there's, various different ways that you obtain the information,
All right.
or may see it.
Right. Well, thank you for compiling that, because I know it's a lot of information.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Any other questions? Margaret?
Just a clarification, the information that we're going to send back out to the schools, that's from all the schools, right? It's kind of like a summary. Okay, great, because I know that's what people wanted to hear, what other schools are saying. Thank you.
So that's why we put it together that way. Yep,
Absolutely.
because that's what the feedback and requests that we got from the staff. And that's what we're trying to do is really address some of these items, like the board norms, which, was updated, but that's okay. We can, it's a good practice for us to get back to it as well, especially since the two of you came on board. So it'd be the retreat coming up in the summer that we would be reviewing it again. Okay. So actually, I hit both the Harris survey and the board norms, which are the two agenda items in this report. Also, the community engagement. We looked at it from two perspectives. One is when we had our very first community engagement or community conversations, we got from our participants that they wanted to hear, they wanted us to have more of these community conversations. And some of the topics were the mobile learning initiative, with the technology and what's going on with curriculum instruction, the PTAs being generous with the donations, how does all that work? The other was reach, and I know advertising. A couple other items that we have talked about is the Common Core standards in Park, and then we separated the overall testing and assessment so that we can address it from two standpoints. One is the legislative requirements, and the other is there's other testing that we do as a district. And so Shannon had recommended that we separate them, and otherwise I think it's a lot to address. So that's what our recommendation was. So that's the first piece. The second piece is though, as we, do Dave has the Futures Committee and innovation, and, we're talking about a lot of different things that we need to address from we've got needs from our staff and education. We're talking about investigating how do we look at community engagement strategies of other districts. And I know we talked about this at the mid-year review as well. So that's there's a reference to external company. There's a company that Malia has worked with that is willing to come and share some information about what those community engagement strategies are and what other districts are doing. And so the thought being is that our next meeting, Board Improvement Committee meeting that is scheduled for Monday, May 5th, if the full board would be open to this, maybe having a committee meeting of the whole so that we all hear what the different strategies are that other districts are using for community engagement, just because we've been talking about it for a while now. And so for all of us to kind of get a frame of reference about, how we may want to do that if we need to, getting the community input. I know Dave is looking at staff and getting their perspectives, and if we could, put them all together. So that's what that reference is to. And then lastly, the unifying statement. What we did was we took all of the ideas that we had at the mid-year review, and we looked at, okay, we're trying to narrow it down. We'd like to get to one. And so if you have particular interest on any one of these, 4, we'd like to narrow it down to one. How we got to these 4, we had over 24 items. We looked at common words that were consistent across those ideas that the board had, and so we tried to put something together to narrow it down. So that's what you see in front of you. So if you have any ideas, if you have any strong preference, email it, and then we'll follow up at our next meeting, Monday, May 5th. That's it.
Anything else for Karen? Let's move on to, go ahead.
I just bring up one thing, the community engagement part. I just want to point out that I know as part of our assessment or our capital plan, yes, demographic study, there's a community engagement component to that. So I think there's some of that embedded in that aspect, and then obviously we have Malia that helps us out with that stuff too. So I think that there's multiple ways to tackle that. So I just wanted to point out that we have expertise as well. I just didn't want to let that kind of slide through.
Correct, as it relates to the facilities and capital planning, and that's why we were recommending that we have kind of a committee meeting of the whole, so that we all, board members hear what other districts are doing, and we can make sure that we're in sync on how we move forward and how they interrelate.
Okay. Finance and Operations Committee, Chris?
The Finance and Operations Committee met on March 18th. The topics discussed, February monthly financial report. The financials are part of the consent agenda here. We are on plan, on budget. Nothing new to share there. The second item, employee total compensation letters. The administration shared their template. This is data that's required by statute to be provided to the ISBE, and we are going to be sharing this data with the employees as well. And so they have a template for that. Student fees we covered. Technology plan budget overview. This is a document that will come to the full board. Dave Smith joined us for a preview of it in the meeting. I think one of the major items in response to the messages that was created, which is, the proliferation of devices and systems in the district. We had a lot of hardware discussion. But we asked Dave to go back and look at the people side of this, the support that goes with that, because when all these devices come out and hit the system, it's been stressing his organization, and customer satisfaction, response times, things like that have started to suffer a bit. And so we suggested that he update the plan as it comes, as it pertains to people, and then come back and talk to us about it, and then eventually we'll bring this to the board as well. So that was the update on where we were in the technology budget. Facilities, summer projects and bids. Frank gave us an update on what's on the agenda for that. The majority of them came out of the budget that was presented last November. So these are items that will, that as he goes out to bid, they will come to the board for formal approval. So he just gave us a heads up that that's coming. There are a handful of projects that have also been added to that list that are going to be funded by grants. So fortunately, we've managed to find some pockets of money to help us. And then from the update, update section, we talked about the stormwater. We had asked Chris Welton to ask our architect White and Co. to give us an idea of what a footprint for Madison would look like if we had to double the capacity of Madison, to try to get an idea of what the green space really does look like, so that when we talk to the city and our collaboration with them to address stormwater, we have a good idea of what's available. And I think that the first sketch did not, it added building space, but did not, it took out a lot of parking. And I think as we looked at it, we need to go back, and I think they're going to update it to maintain the number of spaces, particularly given the expansion of the building, number one. And then number two, we have to relocate the playground, which the building kind of went over the top of, so we can point it out that we needed a space for that. So in the near future, hopefully, we'll have an updated sketch of that. And the purpose of that would be to go back to the city then and share with them what the shareable land is on that, and then continue our discussions with them on that. So that was what we talked about. So, any questions?
Karen?
Just a clarification for the Madison. I mean, this is not decided. It's just preliminary work.
The next step would be to have their engineers come up with what it might look like. So, but before their engineers can look at it, they would have to understand what that rectangular chopped up piece of land could look like that we could potentially, there's a process we have to go through with our constituents as we talk through this, but in the interest of cooperation, I think we should start with, what could we potentially work together to do something with, and that was the purpose of the exercise at the first stage. It's not a commitment to do anything.
So the other schools that were involved in the stormwater talk were Jackson and Bryan, I believe. But did you do Madison because their enrollment is increasing at a much more rapid pace than the other schools?
Madison was the one, we decided rather than trying to do, and I think the city's goal is to do this over time. So they tried to, basically pick one project that had probably the lowest number of roadblocks in the way. And in Madison, we do not have a lot of use of that field, so that was one that was logical. That said, it's a young kid population, so we have definite safety concerns, and we're going to work together to design something that solves that must solve the issue for our kids and our parents around safety, around utility, around maintenance cost and stuff like that. That's all, we all understand that part. But in order to even get into those discussions with a what if and getting a little sharper picture of what it could be, we have to start with what does that look like? And they had wanted to start with the rectangle that we have there, and we said, well, hang on a second, we're at capacity there. If we had to do construction there, we don't want to go ahead and do something to the field and then turn around and have to come reclaim a significant piece of it. So that's why we're going through this exercise.
Well, and that makes sense too, because I think the enrollment is increasing by a lot at Madison, right? So that, I mean, this was a realistic, scenario that we would have to expand one day, so.
Oh, absolutely, and that's and all of these things that we're looking at, we want to make sure that we take a long-term view, and I think the city wants us to take a long-term view as well, of what we might need the land for, because it doesn't, I mean, the money comes out of the same pocket, whether it's going to the city or going to us for this, so at the end of the day, if we make a bad decision, it costs the residents, so we need to make sure that if we do need capacity in buildings, which is, again, that gets back to the demographic study, which we need to inform us as we broaden this. But Madison was one of those contained areas where we thought we could start working on something. So.
I know this is, you're at a certain stage, but can you forecast or briefly explain what the next steps might be? I know you're trying to pull together what this plan might look like, but do you know what steps will follow after that?
My understanding is that their engineers would then look at the plot of land that we have and then talk about how the piping would come in, what the elevations would look like, and start to get us a more concrete drawing to react to. And again, addressing issues around safety, around utility and usefulness, around maintenance. And so the next step, I think, would be to figure out what is possible there. I don't think anybody's digging a 10-foot hole there, so I mean we understand that. So but we can give them the 2 dimensions. They're going to give us the 3rd dimension of that, and then what I would expect to get is that we come back with a proposal that says, if this was what we did, here's what it would look like. That then we can now have discussions with the community and our constituents around what is proposed for the site, because we need to hear from our constituents as well.
Great, that's what I was, once we get this plan, and they'll figure out all the pieces, and we'll bring this back, and we'll have a more discussion with the community. But we'll have something in place for them to talk about, to consider.
Right, because right now it's hypothetical.
Perfect.
And so I think our goal with the city, and we've jointly agreed to this, which is let's make this concrete. So right now there were some sketches, but now let's talk about what it actually would look like, put a little bit more effort into, and I think they're going to spend a little more money into the actual engineering side of what we could do and what it would look like. So now we're actually talking about something concrete, and that makes for a richer discussion as we start to talk to the community about what the will of the folks are.
Yeah, Margaret, to be sure, this is the taxpayers' land, and we sure want to hear from our taxpayers about what they think of a proposed plan, and Chris is just working to get it a little more concrete so people can visualize it. Oh. Anything else? Chris?
Yeah, one last thing on that. I would hope that within committee we would see an updated drawing, and then I would want to bring that to the board table just to make sure you guys all see it before we go traipsing around and waving it in front of anybody. So I want to keep everybody in the loop. This is not committees don't make decisions.
Karen?
One last clarification. The study that we're talking about now, or the footprint, is based on the enrollment numbers that we know today, but with the demographic study, it may come out slightly different too, right? I can't remember.
No, this is just a flat out double the size of the building. Let's assume that, I don't know what the demographic study is, but we tried to pick something outside that said, hey, you know what, if it doubled, let's take hopefully a worst case scenario, although I'm hoping somebody will come back and say it's going to triple, but that gives us a long runway of footprint there. And so that's where we're going to start. And we do need the demographic study to come back too, but we're doing this in parallel, just to try to be sensitive to the concerns of the citizens that are flooding.
Okay. Anything else? Let's move on to the superintendent's consent agenda, which is items A through L. Anybody like to remove any of those items? If not, then I'm looking for a motion. Not all at once, really.
I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through L.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Emily. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let me just throw in quick 2 cents. The superintendent's consent agenda includes 2 items, one of which is a $1,000 donation from an anonymous family to Bryan Middle School, and the other is approximately $39,000 donation to schools throughout the district from the District 205 Educational Foundation. And I just want to say thank you to the foundation and thank you to the anonymous family at Bryan. With no further discussion, Mrs. Walsh.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bastido,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. McDonough is absent, Mrs. Ebner is absent, Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes. That's 5 yes, 2 absent, no nays. That motion passes. And next is the approval of a new policy 7:185, teen dating violence prohibited. That is, this is the second reading and the adoption of this new policy. Can I have a motion, first of all?
I move that the Board of Education accept a second reading and adoption, new policy number 7:185, teen dating violence prohibited, which will become effective at the time of its adoption and subsequently be added to the policy manual for the Board of Education, Section 7, students.
I second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Margaret. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is 5 yes, 2 absent, no noes. That motion carries. Next is a listing of upcoming meetings. Tuesday, April 8th. I will preface this by saying all these meetings occur in the rooms that we're in now. Tuesday, April 8th is our regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7:30 p.m. Wednesday, April 16th, Finance and Operations Committee meeting at 6:30 p.m. And Tuesday, April 22nd, is our regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7:30 p.m. Next is board communications. You're looking at me like I skipped something. Did I? Say it again.
You said last time, this is usually a 2-meeting month, or a 1-meeting month?
Yeah,
and we had 2 meetings.
I will
so
point
our
that out. Yeah,
agenda was a bit light.
usually in the month of March, because of spring break, we normally have 1 Board of Education meeting. Instead, this month, we're having 2 shorter Board of Education meetings, and this one just might set the record for short. So, any board communications? Hearing none, and coming to the conclusion of our posted agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned.